What's up, Nick?
Living the dream, Matt.
Hey, man.
Having fun with technology.
Well, hey, man, it was, we finally got to meet each other in person last week.
We
We should
did.
start there.
Yeah, that's probably a better place to start than
Why don't we,
what
why
I.
don't we do that? And then we'll transition into your technical difficulties. How about that?
Yeah, yeah. You know, yeah, because I wouldn't mind getting your advice on this anyway, or at least just letting you kind of weigh in. Like this is a known deficiency of mine. So yeah,
Okay.
we'll not start there. Yes, I made the trek to Iowa City. So spoiler alert for you guys. Matt lives in the Iowa City area,
I
so
live in Iowa City. Yep.
hopefully I didn't just dox you here.
No, I'm
You've got
not.
it. Yeah, you've got it on your LinkedIn profile.
I do.
You're,
Yeah,
I mean, you could say you're from parts unknown.
I could. I could. I relocated. I went to school here and then I lived in Kansas City for 2.5 decades. And then my wife and I became empty nesters. We relocated back here because we like to go to college sports and just like the environment and everything else. So yeah, so Nick was passing through and we got hooked up for the first time in person.
So I like Iowa City. I really did. I didn't spend a ton of time there, but I mean, I got to go in. I got to drive through some neighborhoods. Got to check things out in the campus area. Beautiful campus.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I can't wait to go back.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was good chatting with you, man. We had some interesting we thought we were going to record a podcast and decided to not cooperate with the weather. It was like freaking 40-mile-an-hour winds and freezing. So
It was like that all week last week.
yeah.
I mean, the Midwest this time of year, like we get nailed with this stuff. When when I got into uh Nebraska that night, we had we had some severe weather hit us that night, and then a couple nights later they had some tornadoes and severe thunderstorms come through. I saw a video of somebody just west of where I was that had like hail coming through the windows in their house.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, it was wild. He walked out on his front porch, and I mean, hail the size of, here I'm gonna steal this little trackball off my mouse here. Hail about yay big.
Nice.
I mean, just pounding down, and then a hail about that size coming through the window. Yeah, it was bad. But yeah, that's just kind of that's the weather we get here in the Midwest this time of the year. I mean, all things aside, even with the wind, I still really enjoyed Iowa City.
Yeah. There you go.
And I do wish that we could have recorded in person though.
Yeah, we'll hit it next time we hook up like that. I was gonna say it was interesting when we met in person because I think this is there's a lot of people that work remotely now. And I remember 20 years ago I had a job where I was working with people all over the country and some international. This held true as well. I think when I finally would meet those people in person, like kind of when we connected last week, it's if you find that if you've got effective collaboration over like remote tools,
Mm-hmm.
like for us, it's this podcast, it translates very well into just meeting people face to face because it's like there's no difference in persona or approach between this kind of a conversation, one that we had when we're 5 feet away from each other. At least that's kind of what my takeaway was.
Same, and I mean, it felt like we'd already known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
The conversation was really natural, very easy. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a really good, really, really good conversation. So what are your technical difficulties you're having?
Oh boy. Um,
Or if it can be nailed down to one or a set.
well, we can nail it down to one.
Okay.
This is
User
where it
error.
all begins. User error. All begins and ends right here. Maybe I shouldn't say it all begins and ends right here. I'm just so I'm like I didn't like this is gonna sound silly, But like I didn't grow up around computers. Um, my mom was a secretary at the school district, and the only computer we had was they made them bring all their computers home for the summer because otherwise somebody would break into the school and steal them. I didn't grow up in a very nice area, and so I like my first PC that we had at home was a borrowed Windows 3.1 machine
Oh yeah.
from the school district, and then we moved on up to Windows 95, and then when I was in high school, I had a purple G2 iMac. If you remember, what was the big the all-in-ones?
Yeah.
So it was the computer and the monitor, everything built into one. This nice purple color.
It had that translucent case on it, didn't it?
Yep, sure did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a roommate of mine years later that took one and converted it into a fish tank. Looked really cool.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
now he probably regrets that because I think they're actually worth money now.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I like I said, I didn't grow up around computers really, so I was kind of a late bloomer. And now, like the thing that I've probably missed the most is I'm not very good with troubleshooting.
Okay.
And the Microsoft environment makes it even worse because it's like the Microsoft environment's not very intuitive, at least in my experience. And what ends up happening is kind of like what ended up happening today for me, where what I really wanted was, I'll go right into all the detail. So I'm a HubSpot user. Like I use HubSpot CRM.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's probably a lot more inside HubSpot that I could be using, but I'm not very good in the platform. I I run into these issues where I'll spend a lot of time trying to learn about like different things that I can do with it, and then I'll try to do it, and it's like, oh, surprise, you need to upgrade to the $800 a month plan.
Oh yeah.
And I end up getting frustrated, and then I don't want to touch it again for a month. But then a month goes by, and I decide I'm going to go use HubSpot again. And today, just trying to integrate it with, well, what I really wanted was a desktop app because it, like when I just put it inside of an Edge window, I forget that it even exists. But if I have a desktop app that opens every time I reboot my machine, then I don't forget that it exists and I can use HubSpot. And so I was trying to find that. Of course, a desktop app doesn't exist, but I can integrate it with Microsoft Teams. So I figured that was the next best thing, and that was a disaster. I went into the instructions on how to integrate it, and of course, none of the instructions from HubSpot match what the menu options actually look and say inside of Microsoft anymore. Like they probably matched 18 months ago when somebody wrote it.
Right.
But Microsoft changes their menus and the names of things every 2 weeks. So, just trying to go in there and figure out, all right, well, how do I actually find the place to set up and configure these permissions to allow Microsoft Teams to integrate with HubSpot? I couldn't figure it out. Nothing in the instructions matched my reality. And so I just ended up getting real frustrated and, it ended up not doing it. And honestly, what'll probably end up happening is I'll probably end up getting rid of HubSpot. Because I will probably never really be able to figure out how to make it work for me and do the things that I need it to do. And I'll probably move to another platform. And unfortunately, again, like the problem is me. Like I know it is. I just haven't found a CRM platform that is dumbed down enough yet for me to use.
So check out something like ClickUp or Airtable. Something real simple where, especially if you ever get an automation, it's really easy to connect those into like automation plays and stuff. And they're super simple. They're not.
I'm sure it's really easy, Matt.
No. No, seriously. I mean, we've been around for CRMs. I mean, I've had CRMs hundreds of dollars a month for licenses and all this other stuff. And the simpler is the better, because I'm the same way as that what you just described. You get in there and it's like it's amazing. It can do X, Y, and Z, and then you're like, it's missing. You're not using it for its core capability.
Right. Oh yeah.
So
I mean, I literally HubSpot. The only thing that I'm able to use it for is so I put like contacts in there,
yeah,
and then I set task reminders to follow up with them on things.
right,
Which I could use, like I could use Asana or
yeah,
Monday, or like Microsoft Planner for that.
right.
I could use the contacts in Outlook for that, and and then it sends me emails reminding me to follow up on with people, which actually doesn't even really work all that well for me because it most of the time Microsoft sends those reminder emails to my junk folder, and so I don't actually get them, which is one of the reasons why I wanted a desktop app that I would work in full time, or some sort of Teams integration, hoping that then all these reminder emails wouldn't end up in my junk folder. Um, and regardless of how many times I set rules to move those to inbox, they seem to find their way into the junk folder over and over again. So yeah, it's been a frustrating afternoon, my friend.
We've been heads down to doing a bunch of automation work and connecting APIs to different workflows and for just a bunch of different things. It's literally like the Wild West. It's a learning experience all the way through it to figure out how to make things work and pass things through. And it's very cool when you get something to work, but it's just like there's some effort in there. And
Yeah, big time. I mean, I'm sure everything is super cool when it works. I've never been able to get any of these platforms to actually like work for me. And again, I'm sure a big part of it is that I don't know, I don't really understand what I'm doing. Um, and I don't necessarily even understand the benefit to a lot of the automation. Um, and there's a lot of like the platforms oftentimes they'll say like, well, you can do everything within the platform. Um, but I don't even know where to start. Now there's a lot of, consultants that you can pay several thousands of dollars to that'll stand all of it up for you and teach you how. But like I hesitate to invest that type of money into bringing in help when I don't even know whether I want to use the platform to begin with.
yeah, that's kind of why we've gotten to. So the automation we're talking about is not like a third party product that advertises automation. We're talking about like workflow automation tools like N8N. Do you know what that is? It's pretty interesting. It's allowing you to do some pretty heavy duty automation where you're taking a variety of products and tools that you have, and you're getting and using APIs to connect all of them together and work in conjunction with LLMs and just a lot of different things to produce some just amazingly complicated and complex workflows that give you just a tremendous capability. So it's not really, I'll give you an example like Fireflies. We've talked
Mm-hmm.
about Fireflies before, that transcription software. And, they have an API. And so you can take the API, you can set up an API key and then put that in a workflow where when the meeting's over, Fireflies will give you a certain capability, right? They'll give you a meeting summary and action items and stuff like that. If you want that raw transcript, which we often want the raw transcript because there's a lot of stuff we talk about in like coaching sessions with a client that's really, really good. Like, for example, the way they describe something about themselves or some situation. We don't want Fireflies just summarizing that data. We want it captured word for word through the transcription service it's providing. And then we want to be able to take that and do something meaningful with it, like, you know, put in a database or store or create a document out of it or do something more meaningful with it as a work product and use automation through that to do that whole process. So there's trigger events and there's things that when the Fireflies ends, it's, you've got something listening for the trigger event that goes, okay, I'm watching and now it's in the queue that a meeting finished. That sets off a whole process then to go do all those things I just outlined at a high level, but they're just making a series of calls through like a transaction workflow.
Yeah, that functionality sounds amazing.
It is.
I use Fireflies, and like you're gonna hate me for saying this, but I use it less and less all the time because I forget to go back in and read the notes, and I don't I haven't got it set up to do anything besides just be a note taker for me. I would love it if there was a way, and I'm sure that this is probably what you're talking about, for me to, like, all the tasks that are coming out of it,
Yeah.
you know, like set up reminders in something like Asana, or
Sure.
set up, meeting events, or like have that be some sort of driver for an action. I'm sure it can, like, there is some sort of capability out there to make all that work.
Oh, there
But
is.
I
Yeah.
don't know what it is or how to get
Yeah.
started with it.
That's what we're working through right now. That's where we're doing a lot of automation of our business. Is our business has gotten mature enough to the point where now it's trying to understand how to leverage automated plays. It's highly customized stuff, but use the automation so we have to spend more time than we really need to on something. It's kind of our philosophy is if we can save ourselves an extra 5 or 10 hours a week on something, that's 5 or 10 hours that we won't necessarily apply back to working, but just life, where we can do things that are more interesting to us. So that's where we buy. You get the ROI made. You just the ROI calculations are pretty straightforward, and you kind of understand what the time you're buying back is. But you have to invest time in figuring out how to do it, learning it,
Yeah.
and that's where my wife and I collectively spent almost 6 decades in technology. So when we look at things like this, and I was never a real big hands-on guy. I was in the beginning of my career, but a lot of her knowledge and skill really comes into play as we figure out how to build some of these things out. But it is interesting because a lot of a lot of these, when you start to dig down and find the APIs for things, it's kind of amazing what you can do once you start working on that level of automation where you're making calls to things I would have no idea. Like, I've always been somebody that I buy a product, I go to a website and I subscribe for a service or whatever, use it like fireflies, and having zero idea about how to do anything else besides whatever I kind of manual workflows I build out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's it.
being able to run all the automation, and we've done a lot with LLMs over the last 18 months. And so I understand a lot about building very customized things with large language models. And so incorporating that into these workflows gives you just a whole nother level of capability then that's just crazy, So
Yeah. I'm, I'm currently in the process of, bringing on an intern, which we talked about that here recently as well. Maybe I can get one of these interns to help me out with this. I'm sure they're going to be a lot smarter than me about a lot of things. So, if they know how all this stuff works, then that could be a huge value add from one of them.
yeah.
I just can't figure it out.
Well, it's a time thing too. So, what's the value of your time? And so that's a big part of everything always in your calculation is, what is the value of my time and where am I choosing to spend it? And, that's just something that, especially if you're raising kids and you're through that in that part of your life, there's a lot of things where you have to devote your time to certain things, and other things you look at and go, I just don't have the cycles to invest heavily in that with time unless I'm extremely interested in it. And then so you find other people that can provide a service for you, right? That's just sometimes it's much more beneficial to handle it that way than trying to learn things all the time. Because I know when I was going through a period of my life where I had a lot of stuff going on, it was really hard to, I was just trying to make sure everything worked well enough, and that learning new things was, in terms of, hey, I'm going to sit down and plow through some manual to figure out how to do X, Y, and Z just wasn't happening at that
Yeah,
juncture. So
that's 100% where I'm at. Cause typically, I don't know. And again, this is me just being a little bit negative.
yeah,
But I invest a lot of time into these things, and a lot of like mental and emotional energy.
mm-hmm.
And then I rarely see a return because I get to a point where, like, I don't know what's going on, or I can't figure out how to make something work. And, and in today's, you know, whether it be, well, basically in the technology sector, but in most of the service sectors, there's no help.
Right.
You're gonna try and find like a number to call, and there is no number to call. There's there's a chat bot, and the chat bot may or may not really know what's going on, and that's about all you have. And I typically find myself investing, 5, 10, 20, 40, 100 hours in something, and I can't figure it out, and there's no one to call for help.
Yeah.
And so now I'm to the point where I try to find somebody to do it for me. And if I can't do that, then I don't do it at all, because I know where it's going to end up. I know I'm going to end up upset.
So, one thing I'll pass this along. I don't know if it's applicable to you or not, but here's one thing that's helped me over the years is when I was running my own business, especially the first time around, it was way more complicated than what we're doing right now. But I would sit and I would think, okay, what are all the things I'm doing during the year? What are the big things I have to do? And then work back to what happens quarterly, what happens monthly, what happens weekly, what happens daily. And in my spare time, I would kind of just sit and map out what all those things were. And then just take a logical approach to, okay, which ones of these things am I doing? Which ones of these things should I have somebody else doing? Which ones of things really aren't that important and nobody should be doing, because I don't want to, they're not impactful enough to spend money on it or resources or whatever to do. And for me, I've always just kind of taken a logical approach to just taking the whole and then breaking it down into its parts to understand can I remove inefficient things or things that aren't really that important. And that really helped me a lot. And then, because then once I got those things, then I was able to go back the other direction and go, okay, well, how do I get more efficient with this then? So now I'm down to the things that are core now. Now, how can I more efficiently address these types of things? So I'm always just a proponent of just taking a very structured approach to everything. Maybe it's more my teaching background or wherever it is, but I find at least for me, I keep my sanity when I'm able to at least feel like I have a system I've implemented against something,
Yeah. No, I mean, that is a good approach. That's probably what I need to be doing with this. Instead of just getting frustrated and throwing it in the trash and walking away to the next stuff.
What you end up doing is you take something like that CRM and you go, okay, let me have an honest conversation about what am I actually trying to do with the CRM. I'm trying to get a name. I'm trying to track something. I'm trying to do this. And then you look at it and go, okay, is HubSpot the answer for that? Or is that even too much there that it's just it's too labor intensive? Maybe I should just go to an Airtable sheet.
It's 100. HubSpot is 1,000% too much for me.
Yeah.
I mean, there are consultants out there that have built entire business models around teaching people how to use HubSpot and build out HubSpot. And that's a non-starter for me. I shouldn't be in the platform to begin with. And the ridiculous thing is, this is the second time I've tried to use HubSpot. But on the other side, I've also looked at 3 or 4 other CRM platforms and tried to make them work. And I haven't been able to really, make heads or tails of those either.
Do you know what Airtable is? Oh, go ahead.
No, I don't.
It's simple. It just looks like sheets. It's a simple. Just if I would just suggest take 2 minutes, Google Airtable. Use Airtable as a CRM, and just watch a video. Go to YouTube. Just watch a 5-minute video with somebody that's doing it, and it's so simplistic in terms of it's just kind of its bare essentials of what you're doing. Because people do a lot of different things with Airtable. It's not designed to be this very comprehensive CRM. But people use it as a CRM to be able to capture specific data and then track it. And that might be a good, you might find a use case out there that you identify with that doesn't involve. I've had CRMs in the past where it was like, seriously, like it was $9,000-$10,000 a year for the licenses for the CRM. And it was like, ridiculous capability, ridiculous overkill, all of it. And in the moment, I could tell myself I needed all this stuff. And then when I stripped it all down, it was like, I don't need any of it. I need hardly any of it. I need 1% of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's me. I just need something where I can consolidate my contacts, keep track of like when I've talked to them and what the conversation was and when I need to talk to them again. That really, like, that's 90% of what I need.
Well, so then you get to things like, you know, if you do a lot of work on LinkedIn, if you do a lot of things with connections and try, right, you want to be able to take that somebody's LinkedIn URL and be able to track it, connect it to the name, and be able to keep it nice and organized. And you know, a lot of that, like Airtable, lends itself well to that. I mean, I don't have any skin in the game with Airtable. I'm just thinking there are simpler solutions like Airtable that people use for this purpose, and they get out of the game of buying these big packages. And the troubleshooting is much easier because it's not complicated. It's just once you see what it is, it's I think that might help you a little bit.
Yeah, I'll check it out as soon as we're done with this.
All this stuff is so tempting when you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, I really want all these capabilities. And then the more you research, the more capabilities you learn about. And they're like, oh yeah, I can see myself using that use case. That's a perfect use case for us. And then you never can figure it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like halfway there, halfway no. Like, so I may be the opposite, because when I'll go look at list of all these features and functionalities and like, you know, this CRM platform or one platform or another that does all this stuff, and I look at them like I don't even know what 80% of this stuff means, let alone like how or when I would use it. You know, and the things that I want, I typically can't find. You know, or again, like it does all this stuff that I don't care about for free, and then I need like the $800 a month license to do the stuff that I actually do care about, and so then you end up not doing it.
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of I'm an ideation person, so I like to sit and ideate and figure out what's a solution, how to make it do X, Y, and Z. So for me, I kind of have the opposite problem. You know, I can see like my field of view, my vision is wide on things. When I look at something, I'm like, oh my gosh, I see all this stuff, and I'm like, wow, I could build some amazing stuff with this. Yeah, could do X, Y, and Z. Get really wrapped around that part of it because it's fun and exciting. And then when it comes down to it, it's like, okay, but what are like the three things that really are necessary to make all this that we really need out of it? And that's kind of that exercise of going through the logic-based approach to it, and you breaking everything down to an elemental level, like what ultimately is trying to happen here in simplest form. If I had to communicate this to somebody else, what am I actually doing with the CRM? What do I need to use it for? And that's simply just giving it to a point where I can explain to somebody else very simply, like in a couple of sentences, will negate most of the functionality and capability of these tools and get me right back to the core. And then it's much simpler to evaluate something and say, well, what am I using? How am I using it? You know? So that Fireflies tool was easy because, you know, I've been working with transcription tools for years because I had a real use case for transcription tools, but most of them were awful. You know, when you're talking about 70 or 80% accuracy, it's not good enough when you're talking about transcribing things.
Right.
So when Fireflies, when I got enough exposure to it and I watched its accuracy levels with how it was using an LLM to process the words, the audio recording, I was like, now we're in something that's acceptable. Now there's a whole bunch of use cases I have that I can unlock the doors to those use cases because the transcription was the problem before. Now the accurate transcriptions are no longer the problem. It passed the sufficient level, right? They're good enough. Now I can go unlock all kinds of things with this. And so it changed everything for me. That tool is such a huge thing because there were a lot of legitimate use cases I had for it that I really wanted to do certain things with my business, but I couldn't do it because transcriptions weren't accurate enough. So
now, do you take like the action items or, you know, the notes that come out of it, and you have automation built out to like set up tasks and reminders and everything off of that? Because that's what I'm.
Yeah, that's what we're. We have a good workflow right now. In terms of how things get, a lot of that automation is done, but there's some manual intervention we do to get things sent out. We don't rely on these tools just to fire those things out. There's other things we want to add into it. So we have a good workflow for our business on that. The thing that we're doing now is we're just taking automation to a completely different level. So rather than spend 10 or 15 minutes, even with the automated responses that we get from Fireflies, just as an example, we still have 10 or 15 minutes of work we have to do to get things emailed and other things added to it and all that. That's the level of automation we're heading towards right now, where all of that stuff is, because it's very repeatable and our processes are really well defined, that if you can use a keyboard and a mouse to click through, our idea behind this is that our levels of automation can be put in place to replicate that, especially because everything has been standardized so much. And that standardization then will allow us to spend, that equates to hours a week that we're spending doing that type of thing that can be removed. So for us, the ROI on it's a quick ROI because you can see where you get your time back. And again, a lot of people work your career. I know if you asked me 15 years ago, it's like, what are you trying to do? I'm trying to get time back so that I can go work more. And or in some cases, right, do other personal things. But a lot of it was always about that. Now it's really about, no, there's a lot of other life to lead and live and do other amazing things that we want to spend time on. And that can just be reading a book. That could be walking out, taking a walk. That could be taking a trip. It could be doing whatever. And that extra couple of hours from that automation gets us back to be able to do that again, And that's the freedom that we wanted to be able to have. And anything we can find that allows us to do it is important enough for at least us to consider it. But a lot of it had to do with just how much standardization we have in all of our process and flow and all of it.
See, that Matt, is what I'm missing. I don't have good processes set out for how I'm actually going to use some of these tools. Like right now with Fireflies, what I do, I'd say 90% of the value that I get out of it is I'll remember that I talked about something during a meeting, and then I can search through all the transcriptions and find it. Or I can't necessarily remember what all the action items were coming out of a meeting, and I can go back in and I can find that. Now, if I was smart, I would set up a process where as soon as I get off the call, I'm spending, like you said, like 10, 15, 20 minutes taking all the output from the call and then, sorting out my next steps. Now there's also a dependency there to make sure that you don't just stack up call after call after call after call all day, because then you can't do that, which is right where I'm like, that's the life I'm living in right now, where I have not been smart enough about managing my time.
Yeah.
Which means, and so I end up with meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting all day. And that puts me in a position where I can't spend that time right after the call, kind of setting up and scheduling next steps and understanding what my actions are going to be. Now I could do all that at the end of a day. But it's like, that doesn't work as well for me. I know it doesn't, because typically by 4:30 or 5 o'clock, like, I'm ready to be done.
Yeah. Part of it, again, I think the logical approach, this is all easier said than done too, by the way. So I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but I know for me to break some of that was, and you don't always have this option. So I'm, take it with a grain of salt what I'm saying, but some of it is if you use a methodical approach to something, you look at it and go, where do I have an option where I don't put everything back to back to back? And are there things that I can remove out that alleviate some of that time, that allows me to move some, put better spacing between things? And you don't control 100% of your schedule, so you can't always do that. But I started to get into that mode where I just started to challenge everything and look at, a systems-based approach to everything. Looked at everything I was doing, how much time I was spending, how much time can I buy back? And I realized I could buy back quite a bit more time than I probably thought I could buy back, just because I was mismanaging a lot of it.
Yeah.
And then
we were saying,
and then it's interesting when you do that, because then you find that every single thing you do is you can use the same method against it. So I'll give you an example. So in our business, we do a lot of discovery calls. So we'll talk to people and just have an initial conversation with them and try to understand, where they're at, what they're trying to solve for. And when we kind of applied that approach and looked at, well, how are we running those discovery calls? And what tools are we using? How organized are we? Is it following a standard kind of a flow with enough time for people to be able for it to be personal? You're not shoving a round peg in a square hole or whatever. You're allowing people to talk, but enough of that unstructured talk is put into kind of a defined window of time so that things move. And then you find when you do that, right, that you're more organized going in and you're more organized coming back out of those conversations. And that's buying you time back. And every single thing is like that. I used to do when I had staff meetings, like you get 10, 15 direct reports and you're going through staff meetings, just like, I found I would look at something like that and go, geez, these things are just dragging on and on and on. And, we do go around the table and it's like, I found there's no structure to this. So it's completely unstructured. So somebody will talk for 9 minutes and the next person talks for 9 seconds. And I just wasn't doing a very effective job of managing the structure of the meeting and the expectations. And what I found was a lot of those conversations, people were just waiting to the staff meeting to dump it on me and put it out there. And it really wasn't something applicable to the larger group. It was a one-on-one conversation. But what the problem was, I wasn't making myself available for enough one-on-one conversations because I was back in 17 meetings every day running around, and like these people are waiting on me and I'm not making myself available. So that, again, I don't know how else to describe it besides just kind of this real methodical way of breaking everything down and looking at it, understanding it, and removing the stuff that isn't inefficient. Is kind of what I found worked for me.
Yeah, I mean, like establishing that methodology is, and the process that would support it, I think is probably what takes you, basically what can get you to the next level. Because I look at where I'm at right now. I have been able to get away with, and I mean that literally when I say get away with, because that's what it is. Like I've been good enough doing what I've always done to get to this level.
Okay.
And that, I mean, on one hand, great. On the other hand, that's terrible because it can get you in this position where all of a sudden you've created bad habits. You've gotten yourself into wasteful routines.
Right.
And when you don't have this process and methodology established, where all of a sudden now, like, I need to get to another level. And I may be in a position where I need to move up a level or two from where I'm at. And I'm going to have to get a lot more intentional and a lot more disciplined if I'm going to get there. And a lot of that is it's establishing, kind of guardrails around how I'm going to operate and putting, operationalizing processes that make sense to support me getting to that next level. And I haven't done it yet, but I need to. I'm going to have to, otherwise I'm going to keep floundering where I'm at. And I'm guessing I'm not unique in this. I'm sure there's plenty of other folks that have been kind of in this, in this same stage in their career. I guess on glass half full, at least I'm aware. Maybe that's the first step.
Yeah, I think, what changes it, I think, for people is when they find themselves in a really demanding situation and where it's met the expectations of, especially if they're reporting to somebody, the person's expectation of their performance, and they don't really care how long it takes. The person's not in a position to go complain to somebody. It's like, hey, I don't have enough time to do this, because the response is, you'll figure out then why are you working for me?
Right.
At this level, you need to perform. I don't want to hear about whatever. I don't want to hear about the 17, meeting conflicts and all the rest of the stuff you have. I want results. And you adapt really quick to that. If you're a success oriented person, you like, oh my gosh, I got to figure this out, or it's not gonna work. And sometimes we just need to be thrown in the deep end of the pool to get to that point, to push ourselves there. You know what I mean?
I used to have a manager that would say, I don't want to hear about all the labor pains. I just want to see the baby. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. Like you get in that situation sometimes where you just have to deliver results.
Yeah, I remember kind of at a certain point in my career, I was working a lot of hours, and I was working really hard, and I felt like I was delivering, and I made the mistake of mentioning the amount of time I was spending doing something, and it was not met with, oh, hey, here's some positive reinforcement. It was met with, why are you so inefficient, and inefficient to the point where you think you need to share that with me.
How did that go over with you?
My ego was bruised,
Mm-hmm.
but it taught me. I learned from it, and I learned that that's a response that I hadn't gotten before,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a response that I better expect to get with the types of people that I was working for and around now at that point. And I just changed from that. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not repeating this again. I'm not going to get in that situation where somebody's going to say that to me.
Right.
So I learned, and I would watch other people make the mistake and keep making those types of mistakes over and over again. I'm like, my ego is too sensitive to have to go through that more than I have to, you know?
Yeah.
But it was an interesting, I got a whole bunch of those kinds of stories where I've run into that thing where, just the kind of response, it's almost humorous if you were watching a movie or a TV show or something play out, like if you're watching The Office or something where you're seeing somebody like see some of these responses, you'd be like, you're laughing at it.
Feeling stuck in your career? Like you're not reaching your full potential? At Greenbox U, we help you unlock the hidden potential within your career journey. Our Digital Foundations for Success course, combined with personalized coaching, equips you with the tools and strategies to discover, monetize, and apply your unique skills, knowledge, and experiences. Don't just meet expectations, exceed them.